Hey guys, how are we doing today? Sorry I couldn't be there. I did want to make this video for you about propaganda so that I could explain what it is used for, give you a few examples, talk about those examples, because after this video, you and a partner are going to look through the internet, you're going to use Google, I guess, and you're going to find some examples of propaganda, and you're going to answer a few questions about those. So please pay attention during this video. Feel free to ask questions, have the teacher pause if you need to ask some questions, get some clarification about some things. Alright, so first off, you may be wondering, what is propaganda? Propaganda is the use of a variety of communication techniques that creates an emotional appeal to accept a particular belief or opinion in order to adopt a certain behavior or to perform a particular action. So it's used to get you to believe a certain thing. It's trying to appeal to you in most cases emotionally so that you believe something, and hopefully that belief will lead you to take action in order to do something you would not have otherwise done. First, here are a couple examples. The one on the left is a man you probably recognize and you know as Uncle Sam. The purpose of this poster is to recruit you to join the U.S. Army. So look at the poster and see if you can identify what things are trying to appeal to you. If you look, you see that he has a rather stern look on his face. He's pointing at you. He is wearing red, white, and blue, which are the colors of our nation's flag. The very name Uncle Sam actually comes from the name of our country, the United States of America. You have the U for Uncle or United, the SAM in Uncle Sam comes from the States, and then the first two letters of America. So that's how his name was formed. If you look at the picture on the right, you see a U.S. Marine. The poster is another recruiting poster, and it says, "Want action? Join the U.S. Marine Corps." So if you look at the poster, you have this Marine, and he's lending out his hand to you as if to welcome you into the Marine Corps, suggesting that if you join the Marine Corps, you will get plenty of action. During World War II, this was certainly the case, as you were almost guaranteed to go to the Pacific in order to fight the Japanese. So if you look at the man, he's excited, he's happy, he's going on an adventure. This next example is a piece of Nazi propaganda. So look at this image and see what things here stand out in order to create an emotional appeal to German citizens. First off, in the front, you have Adolf Hitler. He's holding the Nazi flag with the swastika. You have the Nazi soldiers behind him as far as the eye can see, and they all appear to be motivated. You know, they're raising their arms in support of Hitler. You also have the sun, which is bursting through the clouds, and there's some symbolism there as well to suggest that, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You have the eagle flying overhead. Hitler looks pretty stern. He looks triumphant. It's almost like he's a divine figure, if you will. The translation, Es lebe Deutschland, is that Germany lives, or long live Germany. This next example shows a young German male. This blonde kid seems to be a pretty good looking guy. He's well dressed. He's got his nice little tie with his nice little swastika tie clasp. He's holding the flag with the swastika on it. The translation here is that the German student fights for the Fuhrer and the people. The Fuhrer is Adolf Hitler. So it's suggesting here that to be a good little Nazi boy, you will be a good student, and it will only help with the country and its war effort. This next example comes from a slogan that was seen outside of many of the concentration camps. It translates to "work will set you free." So this very phrase that people would see, the Jews, that they would see as they pass through would be incredibly powerful. It would suggest to them that, you know, they're going to work extremely hard before they die, and that maybe they'll find some form of freedom, maybe some form of mental therapy before they ultimately are executed. This next example comes from a movement that was popularized in 2012. It describes a man named Joseph Kony who was in power in some East African countries. He led an organization that was declared by the U.S. as a terrorist organization known as the Lord's Resistance Army. So to keep it short, the LRA recruited child soldiers. So these men from the United States actually went there to make a documentary in the early 2000s. They were trying to provide aid. They were trying to do things like give shoes to children. And during their time there, they realized that there was a lot more going on than meets the eye. So they learned about the LRA. They learned about Joseph Kony and his men abducting children, and they were inspired to do something else. So they changed their focus. And in the 2010, 2011, they started to work on this project. And in 2012 is when this really took shape. So they were trying to inspire Americans to take part in spreading awareness in hopes that they could send U.S. soldiers to Uganda to train their soldiers to better fight, to be more equipped to deal with the LRA. So it was a real concern at the time. So the problem with that was that it failed to mention the fact that the U.S. had actually been helping out Ugandan troops for a while. I've told some of you guys that I was actually in Uganda in October of 2009 doing this very thing. Before this was popularized, before it became this kind of overnight fad, this was actually something that was being done. There was something being done about this. And in 2009, I went there with a group of Marines from different units in the U.S., and we trained soldiers from Uganda, Kenya, just various countries, just how to protect themselves. We taught them some warfighting techniques that they could use. So it was a little bit disheartening when this Kony 2012 revolution was going on that it really failed to mention a lot of the work that was done on a lot of Marines' part. So although it was nice to see the sentiment, it was kind of frustrating as well because it neglected a lot of the hard work that had already went into it. But Kony 2012 was trying to get U.S. citizens to be aware of this whole thing. So they had a lot of really powerful commercials, a really powerful campaign. There were T-shirts and bracelets and all sorts of things that were made to spread awareness. But the sad thing was that in the months after this revolution was supposed to take place, a lot of people kind of forgot about it and it died down. So it really seemed like a bit of a fad. I would assume that many of you recognize the photo on the left. This poster was used to recruit women to join the workforce because during World War II, most of the men were off fighting either in Europe or in the Pacific. So that left a lot of jobs that needed to be done in the U.S. Many factories and businesses changed their product line. Instead of making cars or household appliances, a lot of companies changed their focus to things that were needed in the war effort, things like bullets, weapons, and vehicles. Many of you know that the LST was actually manufactured here in Evansville. So it was trying to inspire women to go out into the workforce and to help do their part. You may know her name. It is Rosie the Riveter. Now, the photo on the right is used in order to try to stimulate the economy. I think it's believed that half of the funds that were needed to support the war effort came from war bonds. Now, what a war bond was essentially people giving their own money to the government, told that they'd be repaid later on. But they were giving their money to the government in order to help fund, the war, because as you learned probably in the last 10 years with what's been going on in the Middle East, a war is a very expensive thing. And we were fighting 2 wars during World War II, so we definitely needed quite a bit of money. The way in which war bonds were received is, one, they had these pieces of propaganda such as not recruiting posters, but these posters that would try to pass along a message. So the message here is that if you want to keep our Marines and soldiers flying, then we're going to need your money to help with that. Additionally, I don't know if you're familiar with the film Flags of Our Fathers, but that talks about the men who raised the flag on Iwo Jima. Some of those men who raised that flag were brought home as part of a campaign to help stimulate the economy. They were trying to go around city to city, and people were going to be so inspired by these men and their actions that they would actually donate some money as well. Sometimes propaganda can be humorous, sometimes it can be offensive. If you look at the example on the left, here's a more humorous example. It says, when you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. Join a car sharing club today. So there, the propaganda is trying to urge you to basically carpool. Because if you are riding alone to work instead of riding with a friend, you're wasting resources. So resources that could be used overseas perhaps. So if you see the silhouette there on the left, you see Adolf Hitler, who's riding there with this gentleman. And this gentleman, because he is riding alone, may as well be riding with Adolf Hitler because he's practically supporting Germany. So it seems like a bit of a stretch because it is, but that's the message there. Now sometimes, like I said, these examples can be a little bit more offensive. If you look at the one on the right, you see a Japanese soldier who is portrayed with a lot of physical stereotypes. It says, "Go ahead, please take day off." The idea there is that if you decide to take a day off from work, the American citizen who is not off fighting, then we will actually be less productive. We meaning the U.S. So the Japanese want you to take a day off. You've earned it. So go ahead, take a day off. It's only going to help the Japanese army. If you look at the bottom right, it's actually an ad that's paid, or excuse me, a piece of propaganda that's made by the Texaco company. So it's probably a bit meant to serve them in a couple ways. So something to think about. The propaganda may, on the surface, have good intent, but there might be something underlying as well. All right, so obviously sometimes propaganda can be used for good reasons. I think we can all agree that war bonds, that those are good. We need people to contribute in times of need. Recruiting posters are necessary. You also have recruiting commercials as well. With me being a Marine, I can identify propaganda. I'm not just going to say that every piece of Marine Corps recruiting is just rock solid and good to go. Sometimes there's some stuff that's a little bit silly, some things that may play on certain stereotypes. So the first video that I have for you does play on some of those stereotypes. So I want you to watch this video and watch it with a certain level of maturity, because I do want you to pay attention to those stereotypes and see if you can figure out who this is directed at.
I faced one of the toughest challenges of my life right here. I couldn't swim, but I can still hear my drill instructor today.
Don't quit. If you quit now, you'll always quit in life. Go for it.
So I jumped in, unsure, apprehensive, and scared out of my mind. But I came up a Marine.
The few, the proud, the Marines.
All right, so clearly that video is directed at African Americans. It's playing on the stereotype that African Americans have a difficult time swimming. So it's trying to inspire them that you are able to overcome these fears. If the reason that you don't want to join the military is because you have a fear of, let's say, swimming, it's something we will help you with. It's something you'll be able to do. So I think that for a lot of people, this was actually, a pretty strong, powerful piece of propaganda, recruiting commercial that was able to get a lot of people to join. I also don't think it's any secret it's any mistake, rather, when this video tends to air more often. I think you're far more likely to see this commercial air during maybe an NBA basketball game on TNT than you are on the Golf Channel. So I think that, again, the intended demographic here, the target, is young African American males trying to focus in on that stereotype in order to get them to maybe look past some fear that is kind of brought to light by stereotypes. So this next example is a little bit more humorous.